A lot of people in my career have confused strategic plans and strategy. The strategy is the what, the plan is the how.
Hello! This is CPA Career Paths podcast with Rosie Flaherty, CPA MSA, where we dive into thrilling journeys in the world of accounting. This episode is proudly sponsored by Chapman University's Argyros College of Business and Economics, located in beautiful sunny Southern California. Are you thinking about pursuing a master's in accounting? Chapman's MSA program is tailored for ambitious professionals like you. With intimate class size and a collaborative atmosphere, you will receive personalized attention from world-class faculty who bring extensive industry expertise to the classroom. Enhance your accounting skills, fulfill CPA license requirements, and elevate your career with Chapman's flexible MSA program. Discover more and apply today at chapman.edu/MSA. Wow, you mentioned multiple times about leading people. Leading people sometimes is not easy at all. And you all the way high up as a CEO is probably even way more challenge than people just being like, oh, a manager, a director, a partner. And so I'm just curious, as based on your experience from leading people, what did you learn? What did you feel like is the most difficult thing to lead people, to motivate people to do what you think they should do, or to help them see what you seeing? Because sometimes it's not easy.
No, it's not sometimes. Every time it's not easy. I guess there's a couple of things in what you said. One, they don't need to see what you see. In my mind, they need to trust you that what you see is possible. That's one. You can't make them do it exactly the way you do it because they're not you. That's one. And then two, the idea that people come together to achieve something is fascinating because everybody's different. And the best integration plans never materialize, meaning integrating people and the way they think. The other hard thing along those lines is changing people's mindsets. Somebody said to me during this past calendar year, human nature is undefeated. What does that mean? Well, human nature, people have a nature of them, and they're always going to do what they're going to do. And they never lose. Human nature doesn't really lose. If you can change human nature, if you can change people's mindset, if you can get them to widen their aperture, open their eyes, and be willing to go along on the journey with you, that's a huge step forward. And extremely difficult because human nature, people are risk averse, people are detail oriented. Human nature of the two individuals that told me it was impossible to get to 1.5 billion in 2025, human nature, their mindset was risk averse. Scarcity, it's too bold of a goal. And we didn't just make it by 2025. We got there 2 years early because everybody came along for the ride. Everybody was willing to trust the vision and then execute the strategy. And look, this is going to be listened to by many students. Look, it's sexy to start your own company. It's sexy to, have an instant success. I've heard people think that public accounting or CPA profession is boring. No, it's not. Maybe the way we do the work is boring. Maybe the repetitive things we do is, well, that's okay. Well, then let's change the repetitive nature of the work. The work itself and the connections and the collaboration is unbelievably satisfying. Could I have done something different and had as much fun? Well, maybe. Been as successful? Just because there's other opportunities to be as successful or more successful doesn't mean that the CPA profession and the public accounting industry is not wildly interesting and invigorating and satisfying. I believe it is.
Yeah, you mentioned about one of the key points, it is change people's mindset. And yes, you mentioned that it's so difficult. I'm just curious if you can just share some tips and advice. What did you do to change people's mindset, human's nature? Because it's probably one of the biggest challenge when you lead people.
Changing somebody's mindset or, their nature, as you say, is hard. And you need to find small wins, small items, and leverage them. I intentionally reorganized certain aspects of the firm to prove that we could do it differently because we had so much success over the years doing it one way. And I knew that we couldn't continue to do it that way. And I was asking people to change 20 years of performance or 20 years of activity, and I was asking them to trust me. And it's hard initially. And when they see little rays of hope or little rays of success or examples of how under this new model, things are the same or better, little by little, you chip away at the resistance and you start building equity in people changing. And so I mean, there are many different small little wins that I would try to find or I would try to fabricate, not illegal or not that I was swindling anybody, but I fabricated situations by making investments in monetary investments to prove that a new way is possible. For instance, I wanted to move somebody out of a business into an administrative role, and that person was very nervous because the way the compensation plan worked. They were very comfortable where they were. They knew how their compensation was going to be calculated or awarded. Where they didn't know it, where I wanted to send them. And so what did I do? I guaranteed their compensation for a couple of years. So they felt comfortable. And that was never done before. And it wasn't anything risky for me because I knew the person was going to perform. I needed the person to move over here. So I wasn't taking on any risk, and I was eliminating the risk for the individual. So I changed their mindset immediately. And when other people saw him in a new environment advocating for the change, they started realizing that things were changing and they started changing their mindset. So it was like the domino effect. So there are many different ways that while they seem aggressive or progressive, they're really not.
I really like that method. You start from small and
Yeah.
then go bigger and bigger and bigger. And also
Yeah.
you set example as well, like this individual was successful, and so it means that other people would be the same. So that's you building trust in people. I really like how you do it. You trust your vision and people follow your lead. I think that makes
Yeah.
you a great leader. I love it.
That didn't, and despite all of that, and despite the incremental progress, they still thought I was crazy. They still thought I was crazy. Yet they were willing to come along for the ride because there was something about what we were doing that excited them, that engaged them, that, wow, he's willing to take a chance like this. I've got to follow him. If he's willing to do this, why don't I want to be part of that? That's exciting.
Yeah, and also when you were at Baker Tilly, you also create the trademark "break the mold." Can you explain more about that meaning, break the mold?
I created that trademark when I left Baker Tilly. During my tenure at Baker Tilly, we did use that as a rally cry, calling card, an excitement builder so that people understood what they were doing. They weren't just changing a system or changing a practice or changing a habit. They were doing something much bigger, and that is they were breaking the mold of how firms had operated for so long. And so getting people to focus more on the vision and the mission is critical because human nature, people are predisposed to concentrate on the small things. The fact that I need to use a new tool, or I need to fold my paper this way versus that way, or I need to automate something. And so if you allow people to simply think about the micro changes, they just continue to stack up. And pretty soon, there's too many changes. If you get people to follow a vision, a higher calling of breaking the mold, then everybody realizes, wow, I'm a part of something very special. What I've found is they're less likely to focus on the thing that's changing because they're more focused on what the change will contribute to, and that is breaking the mold.
That's so interesting. Wow. I love that concept. And I have to admit that I'm a very typical accountant and I'm very detail oriented. And so I like small thing over and over. So I feel like as being an accountant, I see that challenge for myself, and I see probably a lot of typical accountants out there. They probably face the same, that not all accountants have a big vision, like can see the big picture. We like to see very small, tiny picture,
Sure,
and then we
sure.
fix the issues and say, yes, it's done. But then we forgot that it's like
Yeah.
nothing comparing with the big picture.
Right, right, right. Look, So we had quite a bit of success in doing that. People loved the idea of being part of a movement. They loved the idea of being part of something bigger than themselves. I often talk about strategy, and this falls right in line here. I believe that all things lead to and from strategy. Executing strategy is critical to the success of any venture. And oftentimes I would find people that did not want to change a system or change a practice or change, do something different, whatever it was. And rather than focus on the specific thing they didn't want to change, I always remarked or responded with, well, if you're not doing this, you're off strategy, because every decision is made to enable strategy. And so when you don't want to use a new customer relationship management system, a CRM system, Salesforce or HubSpot, it's not about that. What I'm worried about is you're off strategy. And when somebody hears that they're off strategy, there's an emotional issue there. That's like a punch to the stomach. People don't like that. And so I wanted people to focus on strategy. I wanted people to focus on the vision and the higher calling of break the mold, because then I get to focus on that rather than all the different things that are required to execute strategy or required to execute a higher calling like break the mold or some other vision.
Wow, I like how you use the word strategies. And so, from my understanding, when you have strategies, you just create a plan to succeed. And so, how do you know that you create the right strategy for your career path or for your plan, for your goal?
Well, many people confuse, Rosie, they confuse strategies with plans. A strategy is a manifesto. A strategy is a description of what you want to build or be in the future. I want to be a partner in a firm, or my strategy is to be the best my profession. Then you put a plan together to become that best, meaning whether it's development or it's learning or what have you. Your strategy, hopefully it's based on what's in the marketplace and what's feasible. And your strategy may be wrong. You need to revisit your strategy every so often to make sure you are headed in the right direction, that the plan and the activities that you're performing are helping you achieve your strategy. Your strategy, in my opinion, doesn't need to be adjusted every year. It needs to be adjusted every few years, unless your strategy is just wrong and what you're doing is not helping you realize anything. The plan that you do to achieve your strategy is what needs to be tweaked on an annual basis, or a regular basis, not an annual basis, a regular basis. So in case it needs to be tweaked if you find that it's not enabling you to achieve your strategy. If it is, just keep doing it, and just realize that it's going to take some time. But a lot of people in my career have confused strategic plans and strategy. The strategy is the what, the plan is the how.
Oh, so I'm one of those people that I was confused before this conversation, that I thought strategies means you make plan. So now strategies is what, and then plan it is how. I will remember that.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah. Since you talk to so many successful people, including your friends, your clients, I'm just wondering, what are the main characteristics that you find in these successful people?
Well, always wanting more, always having a vision of something that's beyond where they are today, the ability to communicate and articulate their strategy and their vision, the ability to connect with people. It should be a CEO. There's a number of CEOs that are more operator types, and I've experienced some of those individuals. And so my helping them is to elevate to be CEO and leave operations to others. Not to say that the CEO can't be involved, and the CEOs need to take on different responsibilities than chief operating people.
I see. That's interesting. Wow, that's very far away in my career to understand about CEO. So it's good to know. And so for people who want to be a CEO in the future, these are characteristics that you want to develop.
Correct. Right.
Alan, we talked so much about the career, about how amazing you have done in this profession. I'm just curious to learn more about yourself. That what do you do for fun? How do you balance yourself after being all those busy years, and now you are retired CEO, but you still not retired. You're still working. And so how do you find the balance, and what do you do for fun in your life?
Well, I do quite a bit. I'm an avid health nut, so I'm constantly working out and exercising and improving my physical, state. I do quite a bit of reading. I spend time with friends and family. I love being on the water. So we have a place on the ocean, which is a lot of fun. And I constantly absorbing and working on acting on my curiosity to learn more from other people and observing people. I'm able to turn it off when I want to turn it off and then turn it back on when I need to turn it on. So this week has been a great week with our daughter here. Our son comes to see us next week, and my wife, our dogs, and it's a great time to be with everybody at the end of the year.
That's amazing. How can you turn it off and turn it on with your curiosity? Because I love learning. And I always find that even I do something, I always find that what can I learn from this? But to some point, I feel like I'm just so tired of learning. I want to take a break, but I couldn't turn it off. My brain just constantly working, even I want to turn it off.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, when I say I turn it off, there's all degrees, right? You can turn it into background noise. Look, nobody ever turns it off. I don't, I mean, very seldom do you turn it off for extended periods of time, maybe a day. Look, you like doing what you're doing. And, sometimes you say you can't turn it off. I think subconsciously you probably don't want to turn it off, and that's okay. It's all balance and finding the balance where it's not too high, not too low, just continue to move things forward and talk about work-life balance and work-life integration. Look, work is important and the professional side of your life is important and everybody should be okay with that. So, when I say turn it off, I don't know if I really turn it off. I may turn my mind into cruise control versus, heavy speed.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you about that. So before we end this podcast, I would love to see if you have any last tips and advice to young professions who could love to advance in this profession, in this career.
Yeah. Rosie, the most important two things. One, be curious, as we talked about. And then second is be intentional. Just be intentional about what you're doing. I remember, it's just an analogy. I remember in today's day, everything is virtual by and large. And so in order to learn, in order to develop, you need to be intentional. You need to intentionally reach out to people. You need to be intentional about reading or intentional about collaborating because people aren't in the same office every day or the same building every day. So you need to be intentional. I was thinking about when I started in public accounting, I was in Oak Brook, Illinois, for working for Price Waterhouse, right next to where McDonald's had its headquarters. And we used to go to the McDonald's commissary every day for lunch and much more healthy than going to get a Big Mac. Anyway, I always wanted to be viewed as somebody that was going to work hard. And I always wanted to be viewed as somebody that was willing to do what it took to progress and to advance. And I remember I used to every day at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, something around then, I would walk the office and stop in all the managers and partners' offices and ask them if there was something they needed me to do for them. Do they need me to research something? Do they need me to file something? Do they need me to do an analysis? Do they need me to read something for them? I did it every day. Now, some people would say, well, you were showing off or you were trying to be seen as a, goody two shoes. Maybe I was. At the same time, I was also seeking out projects and work. I'm sure in one way or another helped me develop. And so I don't know how you go around to people in today's day to ask them if they have things to do, the people that you work for or with, because it's all virtual. And that might be that was 1987, so that was however many 30 years ago. The point of it is I was being intentional. I was taking matters into my own hands rather than waiting for it to happen. And so that's my last minute comment to you and to your listeners is be intentional with what you're looking to do and be intentional with how you're doing it.
I really like it. I would like to add one more thing about being intentional because you mentioned about in the virtual environment right now. So I never work in a remote position before my current job. Before that, I always like to walk around and I like to talk to people and then
Yeah.
ask and introduce myself. Like my first week on any new job, I literally just walk around and introduce myself instead of
Yeah.
waiting them to come and introduce themselves to me. And so for the new job, I was like, what would I do? Like, how can I introduce myself? And I'm not in the office. So I actually set up like 10 minutes only. Not more than that, not less than that. And then I send to the partner, to director, to managers, and just send an email. In the email description, I say that I just start my new job. I would like to introduce myself. And I know you're busy. I would not go over 10 minutes. And so I was intentional to introduce myself to my new job, to new managers, to new directors, to new partners as well. And so that's something, if you are listening to this podcast, you are wondering how you can be intentional in the virtual world, set up 10-minute meeting, not half an hour, not an hour. No one has time for that long meeting connection. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Good for you. Good for
Yeah,
you.
but
That's a
yeah,
great
I love
example.
that. I love those two tips that you just shared with us, the last two tips, like having curiosity mindset and also be intentional. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Alan, for the interview today. And I appreciate your time and also appreciate all your successful stories as well.
Well, thank you, Rosie. It's been a pleasure talking with you today, and happy holidays and happy new year.
Thank you. Same to you and your family.